Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, and thank you so much for all your lovely emails. After 1 week, I'm glad to say that my gout has now subsided. I can get my feet in not only a pair of sliders, but a pair of trainers too. So I'm back in the game. But a big thank you for everyone that messaged me on that. And today I want to get back to what we do every day on this podcast, where I try and break through the tech jargon, hype and buzzwords to see what business value can be obtained by leveraging technology. And today, I want to explore how AI-driven technologies are already changing data management and analytics. So today's guest is Sahgal, who is the Managing Principal and Head of Data Engineering at EKI-Digital. And the practice brings AI-driven data solutions to help their clients identify, build and commercialize the value of data, but for competitive and strategic advantage. And he's also spearheading EKI's Shift Happens campaign. See what they did there? To educate businesses on how they use their data to survive and thrive during these rapidly changing times. But enough scene setting from me. Buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to California so we can speak with Mo, who's going to tell us all about that and how they're helping businesses at EKI-Digital. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Very good. Well, it's a pleasure being here, and I appreciate the opportunity. Yes, of course, my first name is Mohit Sahgal, but everyone just calls me Mo, so I'm universally known as that. Spent about 25 years in IT and held various executive level positions at Accenture, Capco, Capital Markets Company, IBM, and Ernst & Young. And then for the last couple of years, I've been leading data engineering practices for a number of boutique companies, one based in Scottsdale, Arizona, and now most recently another company based in Chicago, Illinois.
Excellent. And one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast today was at EKI-Digital, you're aiming to bring AI-driven data solutions to help your clients identify, build and commercialize the value of data, but for competitive and strategic advantage. But can you tell me a little bit more about exactly how you do that, and maybe offer a use case just to enable any business leaders out there listening to understand how it could work in their world too?
Yeah, absolutely. I can give you a couple of use cases. So the world has changed in terms of how data infrastructures enable insight over operations. And this new technology basically takes advantage of advancements in artificial intelligence, machine learning, to discern patterns in the data that would ordinarily be otherwise very difficult with either traditional coding or procedural type of logic. And in this way, we let the algorithms look at the data, discern those patterns, find interrelationships that would be, like I said, otherwise extremely difficult to identify, and then bring that insight to the consumer, either the data engineer or, in many cases, a business user, and let them look at that insight and have them make decisions. And that's really the key point here, is how fast can we identify patterns that would otherwise be impossible to discern, and then the speed at which we can show that information to consumers who can then make more decisions per unit of time. And it's that throughput or velocity that really is the game changer in many circumstances. For example, we're working with one large university system within the US. They're one of the largest privately held organizations. And of course, as everyone knows, universities are facing many challenges. Cost of education, cost per student in particular, continues to rise. Revenue growth and strategic agenda and competitive pressures also continue to rise. So in this market, being able to understand attrition, withdrawal rates, student engagement, faculty performance at a faster rate is absolutely critical. And this is where this technology can provide that insight at speed.
And one of the things that put you guys on my radar was when I recently saw your Shift Happened campaign on Twitter. It's a great hashtag, Shift Happens, for anyone that wants to just click on that while they're listening to our conversation today. But can you tell me more about that mission that you've got there to educate businesses on how they can use their data to not only survive, but also thrive during these rapidly changing times?
Yeah, the notion is that today, so much time, 80% of the time and cost is often spent gathering the information. So data sourcing continues to be the bane of existence of most large data infrastructures in meeting their objectives. Most data warehouses have had lackluster results, to say the least. The real opportunity with Shift Happens is to change that equation around completely. Instead of 80% of the time gathering and sourcing the data and organizing it for analysis, shift that to 20% and thus enable 80% of the time being used for analytical purposes and drawing out those insights that could change business operations precisely for what you just said, which is competitive advantage and strategic growth. And that's really with the new technology, this is the game-changing experience that we want to bring to various organizations. There's a number of new technologies that fundamentally eliminate a lot of the data engineering that takes place today. So complex ETL pipelines, as an example, complex data structures, complex data movement across various containers within an infrastructure, all of that can now be eliminated. And the very hard challenge of co-location and integration of the data is greatly simplified through these new technologies.
And on that subject, can I possibly ask that you share some of your insights on managing and optimizing data-led innovation programs? Because I think it's a topic that's so important to businesses now, especially as everyone's trying to do more with less.
Yes, I think it first starts with vision and using the whole 80-20 rule starts with the end in mind. Oftentimes, there are literally thousands of reports that an organization typically uses. And the way these programs should work is top down. So what are the critical performance measures an organization uses to make strategic decisions, and then use that as the vehicle by which the necessary data is sourced to calculate those metrics and then distribute the results to those that need to know. This seems very obvious, but for most large and complex organizations, it's actually very difficult. There are many aspects of reporting, operational, regulatory, strategic, and otherwise. And so keeping focus on what matters most to drive the necessary team structure, technology patterns, and data sourcing tends to be very difficult. And I think this is where we can play a role. We like to use the term SWAT, SWAT, skilled with advanced tools. So smaller, nimbler teams focused on delivering pinpointed results is a way to achieve this, rather than large and complex teams that may not necessarily have the direction that they most desperately need.
And for any decision makers that could be listening anywhere in the world, most of them right now are going to be concerned about ROI on any new IT project at this moment in time. So can you share how how an organised methodology can actually reduce costs and risk. Because again, it's so important right now.
Yes, and so one of the interesting things about this new technology is that because of the advancements, many of the steps that one needed to take now no longer exist. And so the shortened list of tasks as a result of innovation and advancement in the technology thus result in a greatly simplified approach. As I mentioned before, the elimination of complex data pipelines to bring the data into a container, the elimination of complex data structures. So typically, we would spend a lot of time designing data structures with facts and dimensions and other types of concepts. This now longer is needed. I myself have been a data architect for many years, worked on many different platforms, and this new technology basically flattens out the data in a way that is consumable by almost any type of report in addition, or any type of consumption, I should say, whether it's a report or an export or some other API or interface. And so this whole notion of complex tasks that typically would have made up a methodology to go deliver these types of solutions is greatly simplified, and that's the acceleration that most organizations are seeking.
And I'm curious, is someone working right in the heart of this industry, are there any trends in the conversations that you're having with all your customers? And are they asking for your help in solving the same problems?
The problems in general are very similar. They get complicated really fast when you're dealing with regulatory pressures. So, for example, when you layer in privacy and data retention and data obfuscation, access controls, things of that nature, then the conversations become harder. How do you assure that GDPR, CCPA, other regulatory concerns are addressed? How do you assure that only authorized individuals have access to this information, and so on, becomes more critical. And what's also interesting about this is many of the advanced technologies now bring a lot of these capabilities that would typically have been standalone technologies that you would have had to bolt together in some way, shape, or form. They are now built into the product end to end. And so if the source system doesn't mask the data, then this new technology can. If the access and controls are insufficient, then these new technologies have the latest or comply with the latest protocols, and so on. And so there are a number of facets that are now available in one product, as opposed to having to stitch together many different products that often don't work together in the way in which you would normally expect.
And a question I'm curious, I feel I've got to ask here is, are there any myths or misconceptions around AI-driven data solutions that we can finally lay to rest today? Because it is an area where there is a lot of hype, and I'm sure you must get frustrated with some of the myths that you might hear on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think that there's still a general disbelief in the technology. I go back to the university as an example. Predicting student withdrawal, student attrition, student engagement is critical when you're dealing with literally potentially 50,000, 100,000 students, all of whom have the potential for attriting given the current market conditions. It becomes absolutely critical to understand their behavior patterns over time. What makes a student stay? How can you help that student improve their experience? The only way to do that is to use historical data, apply many of these algorithms, identify critical features or characteristics of patterns within the data that would suggest a student needs help. And so all of this is very real. And just yesterday, it might have taken months to create these types of models. Today, hundreds of models can run in minutes. And so you can matriculate the answers or results across very many different algorithms that are looking at the data in different ways to again discern those patterns that would have been impossible with either human eyes looking at an Excel spreadsheet or through other bespoke techniques, procedural logic, writing if then else statements. So the reality is that AI is real. It's here to stay, and it really is making a difference for those that can take that leap of faith.
On your Twitter feed, I read that you asked your employees what is the biggest impact with tech that they see disrupting companies in the next 5 years. And for people that don't follow you on Twitter, can I ask that you share those findings?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things. One is the constant need to absorb data at a faster rate. To again identify patterns and make decisions. This is probably the biggest theme out of all the feedback that we have received. The second aspect of it is the challenge with the rate of pace of technology. So which horse do you bet on? And the horse today might not be the horse tomorrow. And so having insight and placing the right bets is continuing to be a major challenge. The third is there are so many technologies that are appearing on the market today. There's still a need to integrate many into to bring one solution to bear. That selecting the right set of technologies is also another major challenge. So this is just some of the feedback or the three key points that I would make.
And what role do you see EKI-Digital playing in that future, that alternative where work is different?
Well, I think we can help sift through the that landscape, right, of complexity, and look at again what matters most, and identify those critical few technologies, critical few KPIs that the organization is measuring itself against, and bring together the right set of technologies that are leading, that are innovative, that we collectively believe will sustain themselves over a longer period of time, and thus devise a much simpler solution and decomplex the problem so that the problem isn't about the technology sourcing data and delivering results. It's all about what is the growth strategy, what's the competitive strategy, and how does that shape what needs to be delivered.
Well, a huge thank you for joining me on the podcast today. But before I do let you go, is there anything else that really excites you about the road ahead and how these emerging technologies are going to reshape our future?
Yeah, I think we're on the cusp of just some major change. I studied database machines, paper and pencil, and provably correct algorithms, and just 30 years ago, and here we are today. And what I did with paper and pencil is now reality, and so I just see the potential being embedded not only in these infrastructures that I referred to, but in all of our technologies, and we see it all the time. Microwaves talking to us, right, telling us to have a good day when we leave the door. So it's real. It's happening in front of our eyes, and I'm just excited about the rate of pace of change that's bringing this type of innovation to all of us and democratizing it in a way in which really wasn't possible just a few years. I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Well, we've mentioned a couple of times in this podcast that you guys are very active on Twitter, but for anyone that would like to follow your progress, keep up to date with any news or anything that you're working on, or find you online, or even contact a member of your team, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, the best way is to just simply go to the EKI-Digital website and leave us a message, and someone will get back very quickly. That's probably the fastest method.
Excellent. Well, I'll add all those links to the show notes just so people can find you nice and easily. But just a big thank you for taking the time to come on here today and just share how AI-driven technologies are changing data management and analytics and creating a new future of work. It's an incredibly exciting space that you're working in. But thank you for sharing it all with us today.
It was a great pleasure. Thank you.
What I loved about today's conversation was daring to go beyond the AI buzzword and exploring real-world scenarios about managing and optimizing your data-led innovation programs, and how an organized methodology can actually reduce costs and risks. Because for me, that is the real-life stuff that businesses are really interested about. I think it's so good to just scratch beneath the surface of the hype and those buzzwords to find out, hey, what problems can we really solve here? As always, this is where I open the door and say, everybody listening, wherever you are, you got any questions about today's episode or just life, podcasting, anything at all, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. You find links to all my social channels and how you can work with me and over 1,300 podcast interviews. Whatever it is, hopefully I can help you. But if you're too busy, I get that too. All I ask is you meet me here, same time, same place tomorrow. We'll do it all again. So before I walk off into the sunset, all that's left for me to say is a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.